I'm just trying to be controversial on a talk show here. That's what I'm trying to do.
Just trying to explain rugby-wise why you're wrong.
Ooh.
This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? Nope. I can't accept the applause this week. I was awful, and you're going to hear all about it because in the sponsor opportunity green room is John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE Hall of Famer / rugby advocate. King Gift Egbelu is back, and he's got a bundle of joy. Plus, he brought Proxy Steve Lewis for some reason, maybe because the your company name here, Slate, is so full that it might take more. But we also have George Hook potentially calling in. But first things first, 24-21. Not bad, considering that I was 6-9 and an anchor once
Man,
again.
you suck and shut your pie hole. The king is back and the king is a new daddy. That's what's so important.
All right, the king is back and he's a new daddy.
It's good to be back. And you start off like it's a normal, boring show that nobody watches. You got to introduce, you got to talk about the king.
That was not the intention. I assure you that was not the intention. But King, how are the twins?
Twins are doing well. They're growing and learning, and it's only been 20 days, and it feels like they've grown up in 6 months in 20 days.
So I think it's what, 25 days before they can make their first bet based on the rugby odds.
I mean, at this rate, they probably might get it done by July.
Just tell them to bet opposite of whatever Matt says.
Well,
they already got the perception. Like, they just saw a picture of Matt and they were like, yeah, I don't trust anything he says.
Wow. Okay. All right. Gloves are off, pal. Gloves are off. Right back to business. Again, I was 6-9, so I get the wooden spoon.
We know that. Go to something new.
All right, let's go. Let's move on. Good. I like that, John. Let's move on. We don't need to dwell on
Matt,
that.
you suck. It's not a big deal. You do this every week, okay? All right, Matt, start. Hi, I'm Matt. I suck. Okay, then just go.
Observation, John, from last week?
Yeah, congratulations to Glasgow. They were fantastic. A lot of can be said about what happened with the Bulls. Doesn't matter. They, in 8 days, beat Leinster and the Bulls. That is remarkable. That is a crazy end to a season. Congratulations to Glasgow.
Well said. Gift.
Okay, look, we got a couple because this was a crazy weekend. Number one, shout out to South Africa and China making the Olympic final spots. Great final games on both of them. Kenya and Great Britain. Actually, I don't care about Great Britain, but Kenya women, shout out to them for representing. And then, of course, we finally got New Orleans gold, not only getting home field advantage, finally into playoffs for the first time getting in and not choking at the last second, but being within a couple points of being able to get first place, which will be massive for New Orleans because it's actually the first time that somebody from New Orleans has let me know that they heard about New Orleans gold on the radio, on any medium whatsoever. So it actually seems to make a big deal. They actually thought the playoff game was this weekend, of course, but the point was they heard about the gold, and that is the biggest thing that you could get from just this playoff win. And then, of course, New Orleans gold will do well. We're about to do some damage for the first time.
It's exciting, and they beat the champions badly. Granted, the champions seem to think that they didn't need to bring their starters for this game against the second team in the East, and they're putting all their eggs in one basket against the Anthem next weekend. What about a banana peel there, right?
This was the weekend for a lot of these first seeds losing, and this could be a very big foreshadowing for the playoffs. Just because of the fact that they might have clinched already their first seeds does not mean that they're locked in for a championship. And of all the teams that can't afford to lose a championship this season, the Houston SaberCats are the ones, and this is one that you do not want to have happen with the San Diego Legion. Man, this is a lot of blinking lights of Leinster trying to come up again. A lot of Leinster trying to come up in this.
Ooh, it's a good point because Heineken Meyer might not be back for Houston next year. So this is the season they got to win it if you think that Meyer is the one calling the strings down there, and a lot of people do. I just thought Old Glory DC making the playoffs for the second time in 2 years was worth a mention. And they've got a big game against NOLA, and it matters for both teams. The final game of the season in DC this Saturday night.
Yeah, this is a huge game. And Old Glory, Old Glory is they're a young team, obviously. I mean, I don't know about the experience of the chronological age. I think the experience is young. And you see that in some of their games that they play. They played a good game the week before. They played fantastic. Then they go down to Miami. That's a game they probably should win. But they didn't. It's hard for them to play, for young guys that aren't used to this the pressure. It's hard to play two great games back to back. I think what you're going to see with Old Glory this week is a bounce back. I think they're going to play really well. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I don't know if they win or not, but this should be a great rugby game.
All right. Hold up. I got to get back. I got to get some daddy duty stuff taken care of real quick. I got my proxy. All right, Steve Lewis. Yo, the lizard, gonna take care of it. Matt, keep out of his. Yo, I'll be back with some.
What the?
Yeah, I'll be back.
What the?
Yeah, stay out of Steve Lewis's.
All right, I guess we'll be right back with George Hook and Proxy Steve Lewis after this.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
And we're back, and we are missing one of our panel members, Mr. George Hook. We're trying to track him down. It's complete anarchy with Gift having to go off for diaper changes. And the luxury that we do have, however, is welcoming him, Steve Lewis, the professional proxy.
What'd you do? Poo your diaper?
I've had some accidents leading up to this show. So this show could be a poopy diaper, if you know what I mean. So, Stephen, welcome back.
I don't know what you mean. No, I don't.
All right, if you don't stop interrupting, I'm going to mute you immediately.
Can I leave?
No, you have to stay. All right.
Hey, won't you bow down right now and worship the man from Scotland? Because you're over there going, oh, they got no chance against the South Africans. Yeah, it's going to be an all-Irish final. What happened?
Listen.
Glasgow whooped that booty is what they did.
Steve, you have to be elated about Glasgow's win.
Yes, indeed. It's probably the biggest Scottish sporting achievement since Jock Stein and 11 Men of Glasgow winning the European Cup in 1967 against Inter Milan. That was really for George, but he's not here. But it's still an important sporting comparison. Fantastic weekend, fantastic victory. Somewhat unexpected, you might be able to say it, but they've had a great run, 3 weeks in a row, winning playoff games and always being the underdog. So hats off to them. I know a few of them, and they've been celebrating pretty hard for the last 48 hours. And quite right, they deserve it. Fantastic achievement by Glasgow.
Mr. Lewis, I'd like to ask you this. Do you think that Glasgow, it's hard to say, in a game like this, especially when you have a huge underdog, and they were a huge underdog, and they played fantastic. Do you think Glasgow rose to the occasion and the Bulls didn't? Or do you think Glasgow was the better side? It certainly were this day. Were they the better side?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of talent, if you strip it back a bit, right, and you look at history, you look at squad size, you look at resources, the funds that each team has, Glasgow aren't the best financed team, and their salary base doesn't compare. However, they have been a tight-knit group. They have, had a pretty good season, unbeaten at home. So they've been there and thereabouts, and they just grew as these playoffs proceeded. They got better and better and better. Interestingly, it's the first time if anyone has fielded the same starting lineup 3 successive weekends. So that sort of cohesion tells you a little bit. It also points to the fact that their S&C is pretty good. If they're this late in the season with their top guns available, starting every game and being able to recover and go again and recover and go again, that's a tribute to whoever's doing the S&C. Particularly down there at altitude, right, in what was a really physically demanding game, or physically demanding 3 weeks. So I think it's credit to their S&C, it's credit to their sort of team spirit. Talent-wise, they're not necessarily, they certainly weren't better than the Bulls in terms of on paper, but they pulled it off, they got it done, 21-16. That's all you need to say.
Well, they were absolutely heroic on defense, particularly in that first half when they could have been run out of the building, and they weren't. And in fact, got that try just before the half. And it looked like they were the fitter, more physical team, especially as the game got longer and went into the second half. They just looked better and stronger and played with more urgency. And I don't get that. John, your big talking point this whole season has been about Jake White's player management with the Bulls, and it sure backfired, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think George Hook is right about this. There's a culture of winning. And when you take players off the field, I understand it's rest, but when you take them off the field arbitrarily, where it's not mandated by the union or something else, and you say, okay, I'm going to take the top 2 players off the field, how does the 3rd, 4th, and 5th player feel? They've got to go play. And what you're saying is it's not important to win. I think it's a culture. I think George is right. When you start resting players leading up, it's all the rest versus rust, but I think it's more important than that. It's culture. I think you have a culture, when you throw a team out there to the Wolves and your team, your jersey, I don't care if you're on the field or not, your jersey gets beat by 90 points. It's got to have an effect. Steve, do you agree with that assessment that what George said about the culture of winning when these teams, when they start leading up to the playoffs, a lot of times they'll start resting players or they do it arbitrarily throughout the year. And you get teams that don't have, you mentioned the same starting lineup for 3 straight weeks. To me, that seemed very important.
Yeah, I mean, there is a balance over the course of a long season in terms of rotation and minutes you can play. But when you're at the sharp end of the season, when it matters, then that cohesion is very important. I think George, had made a good point previously when he said that Leinster went down there with their sort of B-side lost. So when their A-side went down, they hadn't experienced the climate, the altitude. They hadn't been there. Glasgow, by contrast, had their A-side down there a month ago and lost narrowly down there. But the same guys, they were there 4 weeks ago. They played against them 4 weeks ago. And here we are a month later, they produced the goods. So George is probably right on this one.
All right, let's talk about the game itself, because there was some subplots all over the place, and one of the things was the refereeing, Stephen. And I know that you're a lover and a hater of referees simultaneously, depending on what cap you're wearing.
Depends on the result.
Yeah. How about the 5-second violation?
Nonsense.
And when was the last time you saw that called?
Never.
So if you don't understand what we're talking about, there was when the referee says use it, there's like a supposed to be a count to 5 that you have to use it. It's like being in the paint in basketball, and he called it on Papier. They used the R for whatever reason, but Papier got called for the 5-second violation, which was absolutely ridiculous. It seemed like over-reffing to me. And then Steve, how about the early tackle?
Yeah, I think that's more certainly more significant, right? Because it took away 7 points. What's interesting about this, so I'm watching it as this, dyed-in-the-wool Glasgow fan, and I wasn't happy with the referee. Penalty count was 17-10 against us. That was a poor decision that was consequential. But meanwhile, what you had over the weekend is you had Jake White, who's normally one of the good guys, making regrettably churlish remarks about the referee. And it's like, the ref didn't cost him that game, So it was a little bit sad to see him stoop that low. Your team got beat, suck it up, come back next year.
And his player management absolutely backfired, and he continued to do it in the match. So late in the game, Goosen, who had a great run, a great season and a great playoff run, kicks the ball through the dead zone. So it's a dead ball, and it all comes back, and all of a sudden you see 2 pack players trotting off the sideline. Like, okay, the back makes a big mistake. Go ahead.
Yeah, hang on, but 2 unconnected things there, Matthew. So Goosen, it was a poor kick, right?
My point is he's making a change for change's sake after a mistake.
If you let me explain. So when he makes a mistake, you don't make punishment substitutions, right? You got to let the guy redeem himself. So the fact that he made a mistake there, and maybe he was already making the change, bringing on the 2 forwards, they're 2 separate things.
Okay.
No, they are, in particular with forwards late in the game. You've got to keep as many fresh legs on the field as you can, right?
I'm just trying to be controversial on a talk show here. That's what I'm trying to do.
Just trying to explain rugby-wise why you're wrong.
All righty then. That's why you're on the program. And I also wanted to touch upon your boys, the Fagerson brothers, because they were as impactful as anyone. Matt got the player of the match, but Xander, as you have pointed out, is a machine at tight head and played another 80 minutes.
Yeah, so he's at tight head, one of the most physically demanding positions in the game. He's played the full 80 minutes, 3 weekends in a row, top class competition. That is unheard of for that position. Matt Ferguson, who's, the pig and whistle's finest, he had a fantastic game. I also thought Jack Dempsey at number 8 had a fantastic game. So that's what it's about, right? The big game, the final, and you have multiple players producing their best performance of the year. And that's kind of what pushes them over the edge.
Stephen, before we let you go, I got to bring up what you and George were all over me about last week, and that is take the points. And your boys didn't take the points, and they got the try as a result, a key try as a result.
Is this some kind of vindication of your tactical genius or something?
Yes, it shows that I am great.
Not really. So basically, well, if you think about it, with 14 minutes to go, the Bulls elected not to kick for goal, which is probably a mistake. They should have taken that 3 because the subsequent penalties they got with 5 minutes to go, any of them were kickable and they'd have won the game. So take the points. I still stand by that. I stand by it. I said it last week.
And if you were coaching, they would have lost.
If I was coaching who?
Glasgow. They would have, because if you took the points in that scenario rather than kick to the corner and score a game-changing try with the rolling maul that dominated, their pack dominated the Bulls pack. No. You wouldn't be talking, you wouldn't be gloating. You wouldn't be the Glasgow gloater today.
Second half, George Horn went for the posts as well, right? He failed once, he scored once. So they went for the points. The only time they didn't was just pre-halftime when they needed that score. But when the heat comes on, we talked it last week, it's percentages. What's the high percentage play? If you trust your kicker, there's no excessive weather conditions, you take the points.
I just get caught up in your accent. It's really hard to disagree with you when you explain something like that. So I'm like a schoolgirl. I got a crush. Final thoughts, Stephen, before we let you go.
Final thought, I just got to reiterate how stunning an achievement that is for a low-budget Scottish professional team to go back-to-back to two of the big fortresses in world rugby, right? Thomond Park in Limerick, Loftus Versfeld in Pretoria, in front of 53,000 rabid, screaming Afrikaners who've had too much Castle Lager, right? That is a performance for the ages. And once again, I belong to Glasgow.
That's right. In 8 days, you guys took down the 2 big giants.
On the road.
That's impressive.
You're welcome.
Truly road warriors.
Actually, everyone is welcome. This pleasant silence we have on social media from South African and Irish rugby fans is due to Glasgow Warriors. You're welcome.
And
Wow.
Are you saying Glasgow fans don't have computers?
They're not trolls.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, I think it's great for the URC that Glasgow won, and I'm if my Munster boys couldn't win, I'm happy.
Was it great how bad that Leinster and Munster got beat up?
No, it's okay, John. It's just sport after all. It's not life. We get beaten up in life every day. Let's revel in the joys.
But Irish does it a lot. I mean, that Roy McIlroy stuff, and it's really bad. And you guys built the Titanic.
On that note, I want to thank Mr. Stephen Lewis, as John's mic has been muted again. Stephen, thank you for coming on the Rugby Odds as proxy for Gift again.
Thank you, Matthew. Keep on him, JBL. Keep on him.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we're back, and we're a little concerned about George Hook not making it, but Gift, we're going to go to the top 14 for the final in the top 14. Toulouse at home, -9.5 versus Bordeaux.
Look, as much as I've become a fan of Antoine Dupont, this is probably the least interesting finals that I have. But I got to give it up to Toulouse because I feel like history is on the side. And you got Antoine Dupont. This guy can't lose. It's actually really annoying how much he doesn't lose. It doesn't make sense how much he doesn't lose. But for Bordeaux, and they're on the road, yeah, Toulouse all day.
John.
If Dupont had been Irish, the Titanic wouldn't have sunk. Rory McIlroy would have made that putt, and Leinster and Munster would have faced each other in the final. That's how good Dupont is. So I'm going with the king and Dupont. I'm going with Toulouse.
Bordeaux is a very talented team, fellas, and 9.5 points is a lot of points. But I'm going to go with Toulouse too. Yeah, woo, Dupont, woo, for Irish president. Let's move on to the MLR. Rather than pick all the matches on camera, let's just stick to the Eastern Conference matches where it means something. And let's start with the New England versus Anthem game. And it's New England minus 17 at home in Quincy versus the Anthem. John.
Now, New England did a huge disservice to MLR fans last week, not starting their players. I mean, to me, that's you're trying to grow a league, and that was inexcusable. But I think New England absolutely boat races them. They're going to have it at home. They're going to put their boys out there. They're going to get ahead, way ahead, and make sure they got the win. And they should beat them by 30 points.
Yeah, I got to go with the champ on this one. I mean, don't get me wrong. New England really did, in my opinion, itch the bed last week. But I don't underestimate the Anthem. They've kept some games close, surprisingly. So, it doesn't go. But I'm going with New England on this one to cover the spread easy.
Until until the league or these leagues across the world set the standard and say you can't bench your players, coaches are going to manage their players as they see fit. So under these rules, I kind of get it. As a fan, it disappoints me if I'm going to travel and watch one of these games.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I would have felt the motivation of watching 4 teams close down and then Super Rugby lose another one. So like 5, 6 within the last 2 years be a nice motivation to maybe keep the entertainment value up as high as possible so that you can stay alive.
Yeah, you're trying to grow the game. That's inexcusable. You cannot make excuses for these guys not playing their players against Nala, period.
Well, I think New England on the field is going to run the Anthem off the field and cover that 17 points easily. Then you've got 2 games happening simultaneously. These are all Saturday evening games. Chicago hosting Miami, and it's Old Glory hosting NOLA. NOLA still has a mathematic chance of catching the Free Jacks should the Anthem beat the Free Jacks. So that's an unlikely scenario. But Chicago and DC can flip in that seedings, and one can be the 3rd seed and one can be the 4th seed. John, who do you like in the Chicago-Miami game? Chicago at home -7.
Now, New England and Anthem will finish before the DC NOLA game, right?
It should, yeah.
Okay, I think that's the key to the game right there. I think it's basically a coin flip between DC and NOLA. I think these are 2 really good teams, especially when you add Jason Robertson, the kicker, in at DC. I think it negates a lot of things that NOLA has to its advantage. I think NOLA is maybe a little bit better of a team, but if NOLA has no chance, they're going to play differently. And DC is still motivated. So it's all about motivation. If those guys see that TV, it is human nature. After they had this great win last week, even though it wasn't against New England's full strength, they had this great win at home. They got the playoffs. Then they go up to DC, and all of a sudden they realize that it doesn't matter what the outcome of the game is. That's huge motivation that you're going to be lacking on NOLA's side. And I think DC ends up winning the game if New England finishes off Anthem, which they should do.
John, Chicago hosting Miami. Chicago -7 at home. Who do you like?
It's simple. It's about motivation. Miami played great last week. They didn't get the bonus points. They were not in the playoffs. This game means nothing to them. It means something to Chicago. So I got Chicago. I think Miami's season ended last week.
Gift. Chicago at home -7 and NOLA on the road in DC -6.
All right. I got Chicago -7. It's Miami. Most of the time, anybody that comes out of that area tends to half-ass it whenever it matters late in the season.
To be general across the population of Miami.
Across the entire sporting population, Miami, Marlins, Dolphins, freaking Sharks, all of them are trash when it comes to the end of the season.
All right. What about the NOLA?
At least their announcers are good.
What about NOLA going into DC?
I got DC to be able to win the game, but I feel like New Orleans will keep this game close. So it will still be a close game for New Orleans, but DC will probably win because of the fact that history and motivation are clashing together for DC to still not do well against NOLA, but NOLA not wanting to show all their cards.
So DC with the points.
He just
DC
said
with
that.
the points.
Okay. I am going to
You
go.
just said that.
I am going with Chicago, like John said, and I am going with DC, like John said, because
That's
I think
because
that
you're the
New England-
announcer at the PA.
Let's
That's the
take
only reason you're getting paid by Sheehy this week, and so you're a sycophant. And you're picking Old Glory. That's the only reason you're picking them.
says the guy that lives in the biggest glass house on the block. Not only are you his next door neighbor, but you drive a Sheehy Auto Stores car and just got your windshield fixed by Sheehy Auto Stores because it's easy at Sheehy.com.
Sheehy Auto Stores is the greatest stores in the world, and they have the best customer service ever.
On that note, we have to take a break, and we'll be right back with the NRL and our picks of the week after this. From New York City comes America's longest running and most popular rugby show. The biggest names in Major League Rugby, MLR highlights, and big match previews. Rugby Wrap-Up presents MLR Weekly, made in New York City. Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. And we are back again, and we are back with the NRL. John, who do you like?
I don't like any of them. I don't like the league. I'll take the Broncos over the Warriors. No one cares.
Well, they're going to care, and they're going to watch because we've got little Giovanna here. Hi, Giovanna.
Giovanna's with the champ. She's like, I don't care about this league either.
Bam.
What's her pick for the NRL, Gift?
She says she's going to take the Panthers over the Cowboys because she likes cats and it reminds her of our pet.
That is the best pick and the most logic we've had on this show in 4 seasons. I'm going to go with the Storm minus 14.5 versus John's Raiders. And now, finally, at long last, it's our picks of the week. John, who do you like?
I'm going with a good matchup as far as Chicago's got the perfect matchup. They got motivation to win this game. Miami is in a perfect letdown spot. They played well last week against Old Glory, but didn't get the bonus, so they're not going to playoffs. I think Miami's a letdown spot. Chicago's got motivation. Give me Chicago as my play of the week.
Gift.
Look, I'm looking at an over-under of 45 for the Toulouse versus Bordeaux game. You got Antoine Dupont. Again, you're scoring points. Toulouse is just a traditional powerhouse. They're at home. I mean, give it to them on the over for the overall score. Second half, most points scored between it.
All right, and I'm going to try to win some money for Giovanna and Joaquim. I'm going with New England.
Joaquim.
What are you think, Joaquim? What is wrong with you? You got the King's child's name wrong?
There's a lot wrong with me. And King, I apologize to you and your kingdom and your offspring and your heirs. I'm going with New England minus 17 up in wicked Quincy, where they're all going to be having up there. 17 points, nothing for the Free Jackals in this one. And on that note, we're out of time. I want to thank John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE Hall of Famer turned rugby advocate. I want to thank King Gift Egbelu and Giovanna. I want to thank Steve Lewis, the proxy, and George Hook, the Irish rugby legend who didn't materialize. And thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other shows, including MLR Weekly. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Sign up for our weekly newsletter.
Even Giovanni hates this ending. It's like a yard sale.
And please join our American Red Cross blood donor team.